Java with Joe the podcast is brought to you by Kemba Credit Union, celebrating over 90 years of quality service to our membership. Sponsored in part by First Choice Coffee, the official coffee of Java with Joe, and Real Vision. And now your host, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Westchester Liberty Chamber Alliance, Joe Hinson.
Thank you. We're here with Drew Dinkelacker, President of MarketingAccelerator.com.
That's us.
Strategist, author, speaker, and team leader. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you, Joe. Excited to be here today.
We're good. We're happy to have you. So you grew up on the west side of Cincinnati?
You bet. West Side, St. Antoninus, Elder High School.
Yeah, Elder High School.
You bet.
So the pit, obviously, the student body there is one of a kind, and you were part of that.
Yes, indeed. Back in quite the heyday in the 70s, late 70s, when you were playing football at Mullen.
Yes. So you stayed here and went to college in this area, too?
Xavier University, radio and TV.
Radio and
Communication
TV.
arts.
Wow, this is easy for you then, obviously, with that background.
You bet.
So and with that said, you started your own career in video producing as a storyteller. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny when you look back on how you were as a child and what you do as an adult. I was always telling stories. I would tell my mom I'd go see a movie, and then I'd come home and tell her all about the movie. And she's like, don't tell me all about the movie. I might want to go see the movie. Don't tell me about it. So I loved telling stories. And as my career I spent a decade in video production, producing and directing and those kinds of things. As you move through those tiers, you become more of the storyteller. You know where this video production wants to end, and you get more involved in those kinds of elements. And and today, that's a good portion of what I have found in the marketplace is businesses don't do a very good job of telling their story. And there's a real reason for that. Because, as I've said many times, I've found the hardest business to market is your own,
sure,
by far.
Absolutely.
And that's why I need help in marketing my business. But I can tell another company's story often way better than they do.
Yeah, I can see that. See that. So, and that was followed by 10 years in healthcare as a marketing strategist. So, as you know, this area has grown with healthcare. Let's talk about that as a marketing strategist in healthcare. What was that?
So there was marketing strategy, and then there was also working in healthcare. So in the sense of that, I was in partially marketing and sales of a specific rehab program, but then that morphed into leading the occupational health program, which led to leading the regional occupational health program and looking strategically about doing an analysis of those programs to figure out, okay, should we keep this? Should we not keep this?
Sure.
How do we position this? And those kinds of things. It was not a fun time to be in healthcare. That was the 90s. It was not good.
Okay, so with that said, past 22 years now, you've been a sole proprietor as advising and empowering business and marketing leaders. So sounds like you took some of the experiences you've had and turned it around and said, I can do this on my own.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Joe. I don't know. I'm surrounded by people at that time earlier on, people saying, you should start your own business. You should start your own business. And I was trying to figure out what my next career move was. Got 2 little ones at home. My wife's a full-time mom. Trying to figure out what's next. And was doing a lot of informational interviewing out there. I have a good friend who was a career consultant. And he told me kind of this process for informational interviewing. So I'm going around, and he even told me, he said, Drew, nobody's done a good as you do exactly what I tell you to do. This is great. I was keeping stats and all this stuff. He said, something's going to bubble up here. Some kind of job opportunity is going to bubble up.
Sure.
Not a one job opportunity bubbled up, but 2 and almost 3 different people that I was doing informational interviews with kept telling me, you should start your own business. And if you do, I'll partner with you because somebody like you could do this. So, and I was just hearing that from just other people. You should start your own business. But my dad had his own barber shop for his whole career. We grew up in the 60s and 70s, and my dad was a barber, so when the burr haircuts were big, that was great revenue. And when the Beatles came and long hair was around, that was not great revenue. But I saw the backside of owning a business. And I remember thinking, I won't do that.
Yeah, sure. So what was it that finally got you over that hump to say, okay, you saw what your dad went through, different industry, but obviously he had his own business. I didn't want any part of that. People are telling you now, Drew, you need to go into business for yourself. So you look back on that, what was the deciding factor for you to take that leap?
That was a spiritual decision. I went to a weekend called the Emmaus Walk. And at the end of it, and that the theme on that Emmaus Walk is, if you talk scripturally from the Bible, the risen Jesus walked with 2 men on the road to Emmaus, and they didn't recognize him, but they told him about all the things that have been happening. And then later, Jesus reveals himself to them. So the Emmaus Walk is kind of thematically based on that. And at the end of that weekend, where there's, no digital, no clocks, they ring a bell, you really unplug. They say, we want you to share with us, what you learned. And what I learned was trust Jesus. Easy to say, hard to do. And the immediate application I had for that statement was, and I remember this very clearly, get a job in a sales job in emerging technologies, because people told me I should go into sales, and emerging technologies sounded interesting, or start my own marketing company. And I thought, it's going to take a lot more trust to start my own business. So based on that, that's why I went that direction.
Wow, good story. And so with that said, what is marketingaccelerator.com?
Yeah, Marketing Accelerator. So, we like to say every business needs strategic marketing help. They just don't need it 5 days a week. And we're on your team, not your payroll. We come in and we go away. So the way that plays out often is I wrote a book called You Can't Lead What You Don't Understand. And in that, what I discovered after a couple of years in business, I remember talking to my wife one day. We were on a walk, and I said, there's a lot of cookie cutter marketing planning things online. This is right around 2001. And I want to do custom work. Those cookie cutter stuff that's not really very good, and it's too broad, and it's not really all that helpful. I wanted to do custom work for my clients. And so a couple of years into that, I realized all my clients had the same problem. And it was, they were focused on this one element or this one element, and they didn't see the framework of how these things worked together. Yeah. That was the common problem. And I had recently read Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, which is a classic business book, where he talks about the business flywheel. And good companies are good at these different elements of the business flywheel. Great companies are great at all of them. But if they're good at one and great at all the others, it's only a good flywheel. I thought this applies to marketing. So I developed the marketing flywheel. It's a very simple framework, but it's understandable. And this has been very helpful for my clients and for business owners and presidents, CEOs. I had an $80 million client who read the book. He's like, now I get why the work we did with those ad agencies didn't work.
Sure.
And now he has an understanding of it, because most business owners really don't understand marketing. So we do diagnostic work of your marketing flywheel, make recommendations, on what to do. If you don't have a marketing leader, we'll step in and be the marketing leader to get it implemented, get the system and processes in place. And then I also have roundtables for marketing leaders as well. So it plays out in a number of different areas, but it usually all comes back to the marketing flywheel in some form.
So you're talking about the different services and resources you provide. So if somebody's watching this and they're thinking, okay, I'm starting a business, or I want to accelerate to the next level, or I've accelerated to the next level, now I want to just continue to grow. At which stage as an organization that you can help them? Are you helping? Can you help them get started? Can you help them accelerate? Can you help them go to another level once they've really established themselves?
So our prime spot is mostly with companies from 10 million to 200 million.
Okay.
That they have something to have diagnostics done on.
Okay.
That's where we really come in and help. I do have, the book is a great starter for somebody that's just going to get a startup business. The books are really good for that, and I have an online course for building your marketing flywheel, which is very good for that. But when we're working one-on-one, that's usually a $10 million to $200 million company. And, it's a business owner that is either feeling, one, I don't understand what my marketing team is doing exactly. I might have a marketing leader, but when they talk, I don't really understand them. Or they're concerned about effectiveness. It's like, I'm not seeing the results. And then the third leg is efficiency. I'm getting the results. This costed way too much. There's got to be a better way of doing this. Sure. So it's usually they're struggling with understanding effectiveness or efficiency.
So it's been said that you make the obscure obvious. Tell us a little bit about that. What that comment? So you tell us. What do you think that means? I'm sure you do know. Obviously, they've told you.
Yes, that is actually a quote from a client.
Okay.
He was the CFO of a university that I was working with, and it's the diagnostic work that I do. Leveraging the flywheel and different things. And I just bring a unique perspective to things. And he finally said, his name was Chuck, he says, Drew, you just make the obscure obvious. It's like, I'm sitting here thinking, why didn't I see that?
Okay.
But they don't see it until I point it out.
Sure.
And this, it's kind of bizarre. I met a gentleman, I was at a AI, it's called Cincy AI, Cincy AI for Humans. It's a meetup. It's got like 150 people that go to it. And I did a small announcement at this group. Guy comes up to me. His name's Tom Jones. And he says, we've met. I'm like, really? and I told him, all these gray hairs, that's a lost memory. You're one of them. Sorry. And he said, yeah, we were at Budinola Roses. This was like 20 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
And he said, and you told me XYZ, something memorable, which was, in his instance, I didn't want to be 50 years old and getting laid off. That's why I wanted to have my own business, multiple clients, so you can't lose your income in one day.
Yeah, sure.
And so it's just odd, Joe. People come up to me all the time and say, you told me this.
Yeah, I understand.
And typically those things are things that were obscure that I've just made obvious to them,
absolutely.
and it's stuck with them.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that I've come to know about you, and that is you're a fanatic for Super Bowl commercials. Tell us about that.
Well, that's storytelling.
Yes,
it really ties back to storytelling, and you have the best and brightest minds in marketing that are working on these things with phenomenal budgets that, if you're going to spend $6 million for 30 seconds, you better take your A game. This better be your A game. And I'm always fascinated by how, in some ways, good the commercials are, and in other ways, how bad they are, how they break principles.
Yeah, sure.
Now, every commercial has a target market. So I recognize that I might not be the target market for something, and that's fine. But sometimes these commercials are they just have too many. They're trying to pack 10 pounds of in a 5-pound sack.
Sure.
And which, that's one of the principles at Marketing Accelerator. If you're looking at billboards deliver one message really well,
Yep.
2 messages okay, 3 messages terribly. I mean, you only got that much time to look at a billboard.
Sure.
And so you just see them trying to pack all these things in 30 seconds. And so I use these commercials with my roundtable, and if you've seen in speeches too, to point out strengths. This is a great way. This is a great example. Or weaknesses. Did anybody ever, do you even know what the product is in this commercial? That was one of them. That was a WeatherTech commercial, and they were just showing their building going up and built in the USA, but didn't show any products in it. And so there's just it's a rich minefield. And here's the beauty of it: every year there's 60 new commercials.
That's true.
So it's the gift that keeps
Oh,
giving.
Absolutely. Well, taking a step further, you're a voting panelist on USA Today's ad meter for Super Bowl commercials.
Yes.
So how you study them and is very important, because you've obviously someone who has become an expert, and your vote counts.
It does, and I've worked very hard to get that moniker there, and I use that voting panelist on ad meter rating of Super Bowl commercials in my speeches, and everybody goes, "Ooh,
sure.
Joe, you can be one too. All you got to do is sign up."
Oh,
but
really?
it's marketing that
Yeah.
says
Sure.
that. Include that in your intro.
Oh, that's good.
But so typically when I give a speech, I tell people that.
Sure. Absolutely.
Because that's another thing of just part of my brand is transparency. We're going to tell you the truth.
Yes.
We're not going to
absolutely.
snow you. I'm not going to claim to do all kinds of things that, it's a possibility maybe we can do it, but I'm not promising it. But just being transparent about the circumstances.
So you said before about writing a book. And this sounds like it was early on in your career when you decided to go into business for yourself. Mm-hmm. Why write the book? And as you think about what you wrote in the book, and now that you've had all these years of experience, how is, if you were going to write the book again, like volume 2 of that book, how would it have changed?
So that's a great question. And second edition is out, actually.
Okay.
We didn't dynamically change it. I rewrote. It's kind of amazing. Yeah, it's not a long book. It's a little over 100 pages.
Right.
Fairly big print.
Right. Yeah.
I don't really like to read.
Yeah.
And when we reread it, we redid it because we were putting it on Amazon. We wanted to put in bonus pages. It's like, for more information,
Sure.
go to here for the bonus. And so we were plugging that in, but that was also our opportunity to rewrite or update it.
Sure.
So most everything just needed to be updated, not dynamically changed.
Okay. So let me
The
ask you
principles
this.
are still there.
Okay. So principles still there. You mentioned the second edition. Was the second edition out prior to COVID or after COVID?
That was after COVID.
Okay. So
It's been out about a year.
yes. Okay. And so obviously you took that in consideration, because as we all lived through COVID. And we mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about, obviously you've had podcast, and you started doing your podcast during COVID.
Mm-hmm. You bet.
And so obviously there was something, obviously you pivoted and saw there was an opportunity, and you've taken advantage of that, and you've done over 100 podcasts. So obviously what you've seen and you're writing about, obviously you've lived yourself, which obviously is very important to the reader, who can then experience and recognize some of these things and take it and obviously move forward with their organization or they themselves as an entrepreneur.
Pivoting for a solopreneur or a small business, especially kind of a consultant, is one of the most useful skills. is the ability to pivot. And, I started podcasting because in March of 2020, everything just tanked. I lost 2 retainers in a matter of 48 hours. They were really good retainers.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I don't think I'm going to get any new business here while all this stuff's going on. I got to do something to keep me busy.
Sure.
So I thought, well, I'll play on my decade-long video production experience,
absolutely.
and my storytelling need, and just start podcasting. So, and at first I did podcasts. I just was interviewing my clients on how they were handling COVID.
Sure.
Are you open? Do you have employees in? What do you do? Just that kind of stuff. And then that morphed toward how are you marketing now?
Sure.
And then I started to see, once I got my arms on the podcasting medium, I started to target marketing leaders.
Sure.
And to find out what's changed since COVID. Sure. And then the storyline just continued to morph and morph. We don't even reference COVID anymore. It's irrelevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now what has happened is I have, once you're an established podcast, there are podcast agents out there that somebody says, hey, I want to be on a podcast. They hire the agent reaches out to existing podcasts. And so I don't even look for people to interview. They come to me now. And, my podcast, Marketing Accelerator podcast, it's 3 insights in about 3 minutes.
Right.
Our brand promise is it'll never be 4 minutes long. 3:59 is as long as they get. and I had one woman say, I'm telling her we have to do a 30-minute discovery session before we do the podcast. And she says, podcast only 3 minutes? We have to do 30 minutes to prepare? And I was like, yep, we absolutely do. Because we don't say hello, we don't say goodbye, we don't say thanks for being here. Every second counts. My listeners, time is money. Time is short.
Sure.
And so my podcast sometimes is over by the time some other podcasts that I listen to say anything of relevance.
Yes, to get started, sure. Absolutely, yes. Well, and I've been on the podcast, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned before, I think it's real interesting, again, as an entrepreneur, and pulling and taking different ideas and thoughts. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, and you mentioned the flywheel. Mm-hmm. You have a marketing flywheel.
Yes, I do.
Let's talk about that, because you took the concept and then you applied, obviously, the marketing principles to that, and now that's something that you present your clients.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the marketing flywheel is a framework for business owners and moderately new marketers. The framework gives you an understanding of, if I make this decision here, it has a ripple effect here.
Sure.
And when we build out a company's flywheel, it's, first of all, there's the goal in the middle, then there's the brand, the tribe, the deliverable, the strategy, the message, and then the connection. And most of the time, all people ever want to talk about are the connections. Mm-hmm. That's the last thing to do. And if you haven't done this background work, these connections can get way off brand. It can create conflict. I had one client, great example of this, on the brand, the product, our position in the marketplace, where this was on the retail shelf. There was a lot of snake oil, basically. This will cure everything. Yeah. Our position was, this product does one thing, and we 100% guarantee it, charge twice as much for it, and it's very specific. You have to use it for diesel trucks on the oil side. And sales all of a sudden starts telling people that they can use this product in their non-diesel engines, in their gasoline engines. It's like, oh, time
out.
out. Time out. That is our whole, come up with a new product for that.
Sure.
Don't undermine the brand. But when you just look at connections, and when we were talking to the sales team about that, they were like, we're just trying to sell product. We're held accountable to volume. I'm just trying to, okay, that's a legit position, but you have to look at the big picture.
Absolutely.
And if you're not looking at the big picture, leadership could easily make that mistake and say, yeah, go ahead, do that. Not knowing they're undermining the brand position, the uniqueness, and what gets them twice as much of a price.
Yes.
Then all of a sudden they're starting to sound like snake oil. And that was the antithesis of what we want it to be. So this is why you have to look at the flywheel as a whole.
Sure.
And you start from the brand side and that group, or those steps along the way before you get to connections. But if you're just living in that connections world, you can get off track like that.
Yeah. Well, we've been going back and forth, obviously, with the success of your podcast. And one of the people that you interviewed was a professional poker player. And the focus was discussing managing risk and eliminating emotion, right? And I can see that where for a small business owner, you yourself obviously experienced that a lot. But now you're out there advising others. How was that a value to you, and how have you been able to take that and then articulate that to your clients?
That was a fascinating podcast, that episode, when he's talking about managing risk. And what I found was what rang true to me with what he was saying was that as a consultant, I don't have the emotion that's tied into these decisions about the business. And I can see more clearly what the risk is.
Absolutely.
But as we said before, the hardest business to market is your own. It's because you got the emotion tied to it. And so I run into that with my business.
Sure.
And emotion, pride, just all kinds of things get wrapped up in that. And so truly understanding risk. So for example, here's another great example. Just in my business, right now we're kind of restructuring, right? And trying to do some new things. And oftentimes when you're trying to restructure, do some new things, you go back to the previous times you've done that. And of course, the first time I did that was when I was just getting started. And that was loaded with stress, just loaded with stress because you got nothing and you're trying to make something.
Sure.
And those emotions come back to you as you're trying to restructure. But you have to be able to look at it realistically and say, hey, I'm not starting over. Look at all these assets I got.
Absolutely.
I'm just reconfiguring assets to better pivot to what the market wants.
Absolutely.
But that is that's one of those things where it takes some discipline to not let your emotions get in the way and recognize that the risk is really quite minimal.
Absolutely. Drew, as a small business owner, and we've talked about, obviously, things have changed after COVID, and you're continuing to talk to your clients on what their needs are. Something that we all are familiar with is artificial intelligence. We've seen you at our chamber make presentations to us, educate and inform us, and now I see that you're going to have a new product out there for AI for your clients. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. One of the thing with AI is it is like electricity, and if you remember. Well, you probably don't remember because I don't remember when electricity first came out.
No. Thank you.
They would gather people in a living room, spin this thing up, everybody hold hands, and then they touch it, and everybody would get a shock. And that was like, wow, that's exciting and entertaining. And we are in those early days of AI right now. But it's eventually going to become ubiquitous. It's going to be everywhere and everything probably. And so we're trying to figure out how to apply it. What's the best ways to do it? And in marketing is one of those low-hanging fruit areas, meaning it's really good at creating copy, or at least getting you, like I say, 80% of the way there. Sure. And it's really good for speed, but it's good on a lot of other things too. And so the product one of the challenges my clients have had is on this diagnostic of their marketing flywheel. That's actually a fairly heavy lift. There's a lot to do there, and not a lot of my clients can afford that, because it's a deep dive. It's like an MRI.
Yeah.
and so I came up. Before the AI stuff, I had started to come up with kind of more of the X-ray version of the diagnostic.
Okay.
But now I've created a GPT. You've heard of Chat GPT,
sure.
A generative pre-trained. I forget the rest of that. Anyway, you don't need to know it, but GPT. So I've created my own GPT that in 21 questions will do an evaluation of your marketing flywheel. And the reason this is important is because people are trying to figure out where to apply AI. And you have to realize AI is, I first would say it's like a double-edged sword. You got to be careful with it. But really, I think a lightsaber is a much better metaphor for it.
Sure.
And most businesses, owners, don't understand it. They're playing with it, which is a little playing with it is fine. But they're also kind of like blindfolded, swinging this sword around, hoping to hit something productive.
Okay.
AI is the biggest, shiniest object out there right now.
Yes.
It is serious shiny object syndrome is going on with AI. So you have to be somewhat judicious about where to use it. So for example, you could put, this is just a metaphor, you could put a jet engine on a merry-go-round, and that would make for a more thrilling merry-go-ride, wouldn't it? and that's kind of, the jet engine's kind of like AI, right? And it's a more thrilling ride until the body starts flying off of it, and then you got a whole new set of problems. So putting a jet engine on a merry-go-round might be a good idea for AI, but that's probably not the first place to apply it. So my GPT, when you answer these 21 questions, will tell you where are the two places you need to apply AI to round out your marketing flywheel before you spin it faster.
That's good. Yeah.
So that's the point of the GPT, is
Very
to
good.
identify those areas based on the marketing framework, the marketing flywheel.
Sure.
And in 21 questions. So that's the product has been developed. We're still working on kind of the funnel, as it were.
Sure. So to me, from what you've described, it sounds like it's going to be more efficient, obviously a lot quicker, cost effective, and give you probably the end result you're looking for a lot sooner. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah, and that's where, if you can use technology to get to a result faster or make something less complicated,
Right.
that's a good thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. You have been a recipient of a Chamber Award here, and it was the Jerry Bryan Chamber Member of the Year Award. Tell us a little bit about receiving that award, and was that a surprise? And obviously, Chamber Member of the Year says that obviously your support and participation in the Chamber means a lot.
It was absolutely a surprise. I was just doing the networking that I normally do and helping out the way I normally help out. And do you recall what year that was,
Yes,
Joe?
it was in 2012.
2012. And so I was just doing my normal stuff. So it was quite a surprise and a very pleasant one to be recognized as Member of the Year. And it's what's great about those awards is, and I think most people, they don't work toward getting an award. They just do their thing.
Right.
And it's just good. It's really good for the Chamber to recognize people who, they're just doing their thing, but it's really valuable to us or to our community,
absolutely.
and that kind of thing. So I think that's a very wise process to have, especially as you bring in new people into the organization.
Absolutely. As we look at the future for Drew Dinkelacker in the next 3 to 5 years, marketingaccelerator.com, tell us what to expect from Drew and your organization.
That's what I'm working on right now. I have to say that is part of I'm going through a strategic process here in Q4 to restructure all of my assets and figure out what I'm going to focus on. That GPT is going to be kind of top of the funnel kind of thing. And what's really interesting is my wife retires in next May or so. She's going to cut back significantly. And I'm probably going to retire in 5 years, maybe. Something like that. So
Maybe.
you got maybe. Well, if I'm having fun and I'm making money,
I'm with you.
then if I'm not having fun and I'm not making money, no, I'm not. And the ups and downs of business.
Absolutely.
And so trying to figure all that stuff out has been interesting. But honestly, Joe, I never grow tired of walking alongside business leaders and helping them make better decisions, better marketing decisions. When they do that, when they understand what it is that, like, I tell you, I got this client that I'm working with. We've been working with them for about a year, and they had some real challenges. And he told me this week when I was talking to him, he said, "Yeah, I think the bleeding is finally stopped." Now, I'm not saying marketing was 100% responsible for that, but there's no doubt we definitely helped with that. There's a lot of things that are in the retail world that come into play there. But his side of things was he had confidence in the decisions he was making in marketing.
Good.
That's what I help people
Absolutely.
do is, business owners can sleep better at night. Business owners can sleep better at night when they understand their marketing.
Sure.
They have confidence in the effectiveness of it, and they see that it's efficient. I'm getting a good return for my investment.
Yes.
And that never gets old.
Yeah, you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah, and that's the walking along with business owners. That's what I do. And then we're on your team, not your payroll. So I'll go away.
Yeah.
And then I've had clients call me back 3-4 times, a couple of years down the road. Yeah, we don't know what we're doing. Can you come back and help us? And we got off track. And okay, fine. That's really good at getting things back on track.
Absolutely.
Or putting on a new track, transitioning to a new track, because that old track isn't there anymore, possibly.
Sure.
That kind of thing. So I will continue to do that. We will continue to leverage AI. And it's walking alongside business owners. That's what I love to do.
Great. This has been Drew Dinkelacker, President, MarketingAccelerator.com. Drew, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Joe.
Java with Joe has been brought to you by Kemba Credit Union, sponsored in part by First Choice Coffee and Real Vision. Thanks for listening.